Hello again, amazing teachers, and welcome to Module 1. In this module, we're going to talk all about what learning centers are so that we can make sure that we have a baseline established and we're all talking the same language whenever it comes to the rest of this course. So, to put it very simply, learning centers are simply areas in your classroom where your students can engage in independent learning activities. There are all kinds of different learning centers, and we'll talk about lots of those as we go through this course, but there are some things that all learning centers should have in common. There's actually 4 things that I want to go over with you just quickly before we move on. The first thing that all learning centers should have in common is they should be standards-based. Right? Everything that we do in our classroom should be based on those standards that the state of Texas says we're responsible for teaching. So if you're a pre-K teacher, for you, that means your centers should all be tied to the pre-K guidelines. And if you're kinder or higher, all of your learning center activities should be tied to the TEKS for your grade level. The second thing is that learning centers should be active and hands-on. You don't ever want to just give your students a stack of worksheets to do in a learning center. All that is independent work. That's not actually a center activity. Learning centers should be active and hands-on. This makes them engaging. This allows your students to deepen their knowledge of what you've taught them in class. It also allows them to practice the skills that you need for them to keep practicing, but in an engaging way. It also allows them to construct knowledge as they talk with each other and interact with each other, and as they interact with the materials that you've given them so that they can deepen what they know. The third thing learning centers should have in common is clear routines and procedures that have been modeled and taught and practiced until your students are independent with those activities that you want them to do in their centers. Trust me, we'll go into that a lot deeper in another module in this course, but just know routines and procedures are a critical piece of every learning center. And the last thing that learning centers should have in common is that they're developmentally appropriate. We don't want students staying in centers longer than their little bodies allow them to focus. We don't want them doing activities that are not appropriate for their age, for their fine motor skills, for their thinking ability. We want to make sure that we take their age into consideration whenever we're choosing the activities that go in those centers. And that includes the materials that we give them, how many students are in each center, how long the centers last, and of course the activities that we give them to do. If you think about it, you wouldn't give the same activity to a pre-K4 student that you would give to a second grade student. They don't need to practice the same skills, and they surely don't need to practice them in the same way. So whenever we're choosing those activities, we have to make sure that every aspect of that learning center is carefully chosen to fit the developmental needs of the students that are going to be working in that center. Now, as we go through the rest of these modules, we're going to go into these things a lot deeper, but as we go through each module and we talk about each aspect of centers, I want you to keep those 4 things in mind. Make sure that that's always at the forefront. Standards-based, active and hands-on, clear routines and procedures, and developmentally appropriate. That's the recipe for making sure that your centers are successful, and we're going to apply those to all the other aspects as we go through the rest of the modules.